Too many law firms are relying on the words of agencies for how to spend your marketing dollars. So you invest in SEO, LSAs, Google Ads, Meta Ads, and they don't
Oh
work. And
no!
that's because if everyone is doing the exact same thing with the exact same strategies, how do you get results? Well, the only way to get results is to outspend the market. And a lot of you don't want to find yourself in that battle because there are some law firms out there that are spending millions of dollars a month just to drown you out. If you want to have success with your marketing and advertising, you need to work off what your data is telling you. And that's because your data doesn't lie. It will tell you the exact story of exactly where to spend your marketing and advertising dollars so you can actually get results. Now, I audit over 50 law firm websites a week, so I can tell you firsthand that 95% of law firms don't have a handle on your data. You don't have your tracking set up, you don't have any sort of reporting system. Most of you are just relying on what your agency is sending over to you, and who knows if it's actually right. So in this video, I'm going to show you three things. One, I'm going to show you how to build a tracking plan that accurately tracks your business objectives, your key performance indicators, and exactly how to pull that into the right system so you can track it and measure it accurately. Two, I'm going to review the exact platforms that you should be using in order to track this data and report on it. And three, I'm going to show you how to make informed decisions about your data. Now, I know this isn't the sexiest topic. We're not talking about getting phone calls and getting signed cases, but this is the foundation of it. If you don't have this right, everything else is going to fall apart. And that's probably why you're here watching this video, because you spend a ton of money, you spend a bunch of time, you're blaming agencies, you don't know what to do. It starts with you, it starts with your data. And if you stick around to the end, I'm gonna show you how to use this template that I'm gonna walk you through in this, and I'm gonna make you an offer that you can't refuse because I'll do this for you for free, but you gotta stick around to the end. So let's get into it. This is not the sexiest stuff, like I already said, but it's so important. And I guarantee you haven't gone through at this level. And this is what I like to say, that your law firm is operating blind. You don't have a handle on even the simplest things like your business objectives and your goals. And I know that sounds rudimentary, like you're trying to generate leads, you're trying to grow your business, but sometimes you have to go through that process of actually taking the time to define them, write them down, if you want to be able to measure against them, and also hold your agency or your internal team accountable for what happens with these things. So I'm going to show you how to define very simple objectives, goals, and key performance indicators, aka KPIs, that are going to help you to get much more out of your marketing and advertising campaigns. I'm going to help you define what success looks like so you can hold your marketing dollars accountable, your team, your agencies, all the people working on this. And I'm also going to show you how we pull all this into a report that makes sense and gets buy-in from even the busiest partners, because we've gone through this before with plenty of our law firm clients where you're getting probably reports from your agency, but they're not the right reports because they're 35 pages long and it looks like Chinese, and your partners don't have the time to review it. You might have that time to review it. So I'm going to show you how to really simplify this and boil this down to the things that make dollars and cents, as I like to say. So this starts with a tracking plan. I used to work in corporate America. My first job out of undergrad, before I got my MBA, was working for Deloitte Consulting. And I used to think that this was so simple and so kind of too simple and too basic, because we were working with companies like Target and Best Buy. And this is the exact exercise that we would put them through. We would literally sit down and go through this very tedious process with the internal marketing teams. But we as an agency couldn't really function without it, because when you're a company of that size and you're spending so much money, it's really hard to know where your money's going and how you're tracking it and the results that you're getting from it. And otherwise, it just becomes a rising tide raises all ships situation. And we can't do that here. If you want to have success in hyper competitive, hyper expensive niches like legal, you got to be tracking things down to the pin drop, right? So it starts with this tracking plan. The first thing that we want to do is just define your business objective. I've gone ahead and done this for you. It's to generate qualified phone calls and signed cases. Now, obviously, signed cases, qualified phone calls, they kind of go hand in hand. But from a marketing point of view, because there's intake involved, there's sales involved, there's offers involved. From a marketing purely point of view, it's qualified phone calls, not signed cases, because again, like I said, there's so much outside of marketing's control. Got to time with sales, got to time with intake, all these other things. It's part of the macro plan, but from a marketing point of view, the main business objective here is to drive qualified phone calls. And for the record, after I walk you through this whole kind of diagram here, you'll see how you can flop this through really for all aspects of your business, right? If we're talking about doing this for sales, the business objective might be, signed cases, or a certain level of signed cases, or a certain number of signed cases. So this is the top-down approach where we're saying this is the main thing. I talk to my team about this all the time. I say, keep the main thing the main thing. Inside of our business, This is our North Star metric. My job is to get my clients qualified phone calls. So once you do this and you define this, everything within your business shifts towards focusing on this or holding the people accountable to do this. So that's part one, defining the business objective. Part two is then to define the goal. So how do we define a goal? We say, okay, what do we need to do in order to get qualified phone calls, right? What are the tactics? What are the campaigns? What are the specific things that we need to do in order to get more qualified phone calls for our law firm? Now, there's a number of ways that we could do this, right? If you're a smaller firm, this could be one thing. If you're a larger firm, this could be 100 different things, right? So I'm just going to kind of break this off to you in a very simple format in kind of our standard pitch that when we work with a lot of our standard scope, if you will, when we work with a lot of law firms for what we do in order to drive qualified phone calls. So first, ranking Google Maps. So local SEO, that local 3-pack, when you Google like personal injury attorney near me, you see the 3 results with the map, the reviews. That's the Google Maps pack. All of our data shows that that is by far and away the best way to drive qualified phone calls. It's competitive, it's hard, but it's number one on our list. Number two would be to get LSAs dialed in. So a lot of you guys have run LSAs, maybe you've done AdWords, some sort of, locally focused, search-driven advertising campaign. Again, it really depends on your market. This is not necessarily going to be a go-to-market strategy for everybody watching this. This is going to be kind of a little bit more of a generic high-level strategy. And again, you probably already know these things, and that's good. I want this to be simple. I don't want to throw like TikTok automation with AI or something in here to confuse you, because it's not the campaigns that you have an issue with. It's how you're managing all these campaigns and how it's rolling up inside your business. And then number 3 might be something like retarget on Meta, right? So these 3 things here, if we do these 3 things and we get them to work, obviously that's a whole other conversation. But these 3 things will drive qualified phone calls. Now, okay, so we got the business objective. We know what the goals are and how we're going to drive qualified phone calls. Now, how are we going to measure against what's working? So a KPI, again, is a key performance indicator. These are different metrics that we can set so we can understand the success of what our campaigns, of what our goals, of what our marketing tactics are driving. So the KPI for ranking the Google Maps pack, things we might want to look at, GBP stands for Google Business Profile. So your Google Business Profile is what's ultimately tied to that local ranks map ranking in Google. So Google Business Profile, if you don't have one set up, you need to be verified, but you get a treasure trove of data from that. You can look at the impressions that your profile is getting on a monthly basis. You can look at the clicks. You can look at the number of phone calls. We can look at the ranking from separate software, not from Google Business Profile. And then ultimately, we also want to look at signed cases. Now, Google Business Profile doesn't necessarily measure signed cases for you. You're going to have to connect that to a CRM in order to get that to work. We'll talk about that a little bit more. But again, all we're really mapping out here is we're not worried about the software. We're not worried about where we're getting the data from or how we're going to visualize or report it. All we're saying is, okay, if we want to get qualified phone calls and we've identified that local SEO is one of the ways that we're going to do that, what do we need to see in order to judge this as a success, right? So you're starting to see how this kind of fleshes out a little bit. We come over to LSAs, we'd probably want to look at number of phone calls, cost per phone call, and cost per signed case. That's one of the good things about advertising is it's much easier to move to a cost per outcome as opposed to just a total aggregate, because we're not paying in the organic side of things, which is great. But with LSAs and also on Meta over here, so we have cost per action, which would be a lead, and then cost per signed case. We're able to get a actual number target on these tactics. So, okay. So again, we've got business objective, we've got the goals, and now we've got KPIs against how we're going to measure against those goals. What's next? Now we have targets. So a target is how we are going to specifically measure against the KPIs. Now, a target, you might not have this number in mind because you haven't been through this. A lot of this data, a lot of this tracking is going to come from experience doing this. You could ask your agency, or you could just set targets to begin with that you can then measure and adjust against over time. This is a living, breathing thing. These targets might be a first benchmark that you want to set, but these are specific numbers that we can use to then report against and also measure the effectiveness of these KPIs to make sure that we're doing it. Because it's one thing to just say, okay, we have a KPI for Google Business Profile calls, but like, how many should we be getting? What's a success? What makes getting a phone call a success metric versus not? So the targets that we have here, one for this pillar here, ranking in Google Maps, would be a top 3 ranking, because if we're not ranking in the top 3, then we're not really getting any sort of traffic or volume from it. And then maybe 50 phone calls a month. Now, this is going to be I do this all the time, right? We have 75 campaigns that we worked on over the past year with lawyers. I know 50 phone calls a month is a pretty solid target that we can use, but it depends on the market. I'm here in Miami. If I'm working with a DUI lawyer, a divorce lawyer, a personal injury lawyer, this is probably going to be more like 150 phone calls a month. But if I'm in Albuquerque, New Mexico, working with a business attorney, that might be 20 phone calls a month. I have the experience to know that. You can look at your Google Business Profile data to see how it's performing for you already to get some sort of metric. But again, you could set this for 500, and then as you get into it, you just kind of keep on measuring and adjusting it. Again, this is a living, breathing thing here. Under LSAs, so $350 per call, $1,500 per signed case. Again, this is going to dramatically depend on your practice area and your location. For personal injury in South Florida, we see a cost per call around $450 to $500. A signed case anywhere $2,000 to $2,500, depending on intake, depending on all these different things, depending on what you're willing to take. So again, you start with these and you adjust them. What's also cool about LSA is you can actually go and just Google LSA calculator, and Google has a calculator that you can use to forecast in your specific niche what a phone call might cost you in your zip code. Not the most accurate thing, but it's a good place to start to set some targets that you can then measure and adjust against. Because again, you set these, you move against them, you adjust against them, but this is how we start to hold the people who are working on this stuff accountable. If I make this for you and I tell you $350 per phone call, and then you're getting $850 per phone call, that's something you can hold me accountable for, right? That's something that we can talk, and you're not just getting what you get. You're not just spending just to spend. You have some sort of target measured against it. So finally, over here under Meta, $200 per lead, $1,500 per signed case. We keep the signed case kind of even here. They're going to fluctuate. They're going to vary. Leads are generally cheaper on Meta. That's Instagram and Facebook versus LSAs. But it usually takes significantly more of them to actually sign cases because the quality is not as good. So then the final piece here at the bottom is just reporting. So now that we have all this measured, right, we have all this defined, we say, okay, this is what we're driving against. This is how we're going to do it. This is what we're going to measure against. These are specific targets that we want to try and hit on a monthly basis, quarterly basis, yearly basis. How are we going to report on this? How are we going to see this? How are we going to visualize it? This is the final step. So we're going to pull in Google Business Profile call data and CRM signed case data. So now we're starting to talk about the platforms. Now we're starting to talk about, okay, like this is the KPI data, but like what is the actual platform that we're going to need this data from? The Google Business Profile reporting. And if you want to measure against signed cases, which you do, you're going to have a CRM set up and optimized and tracking from source all the way to close, so we can get that data. And then over here, LSA, platform data, CRM data, and then metadata and signed case data. So this is a full tracking plan. Again, I know it seems pretty basic. And I told you in the beginning of the video, if you want me to do this for you, I'll actually do this for you for free. Just book a call through the link below and we'll go through this exercise on the call together. But this is incredibly important. Just having this here, right? When you go to talk to an agency, when you go to hire somebody internally, however you're going to do your marketing, now you've got a plan. This is not just, hey, I want to do SEO. Now we're saying, okay, we're going to hold SEO accountable. We're going to hold our advertising program accountable. And again, this can expand all the way out, right? We have clients that have 15 different pillars in here to drive qualified phone calls. We've got billboards, we've got referral programs, we've got outbound sales, we've got social media. There's all sorts of different, campaigns that you can set up here. But if you're not tracking against them, then you're really just operating blind in that. So now let's talk a little bit about tracking execution in terms of how are we actually going to set this up and take this from a cool slide into actual reporting and decision making. So I like to start here with another graphic here, just looking at platform and then measurement. So meaning, what are the platforms that we need? What's the software? What's the technology? And then what's the data that we need to extract from that in order to build a report, a dashboard, something that the leadership team can look at and hold us accountable with. So again, this is a very, very, very simple rudimentary. This is all for explanation purposes. Usually when we do this, There's usually like 8 to 15 different platforms that we're using. It's going to vary depending on your law firm. Some of these are paid, some of these are free. It just depends on where you are, depends on what you have, depends on what you're doing, and the aggressiveness of your campaigns to determine what platforms you're actually going to need here. So first and foremost, everyone's going to use Google Analytics. It's a free platform. Google Analytics is kind of like the catch-all for everything. Anything that occurs on the website, Google Analytics is going to track. So what we're going to measure here, website conversions, website traffic, website engagement, and then website leads. So again, we're looking at number of visits, where they're coming from, the platforms they're coming from, how long it's staying on the website, how many pages they're looking at, and then any actions they're taking in terms of like submitting an email, making a phone call, starting a live chat, etc. So Google Analytics is kind of the catch-all for anything on the website. What Converts is a software tracking that we use as a paid platform. This allows us to look at total phone calls. It actually records every single phone call. We can see the length of it, we can see where it's coming from, and we can see the source of where it's coming from. So when we're doing advertising or when we're doing different types of marketing, this will use tracking numbers so we can actually see the source of the traffic, specifically phone calls, which is going to be the number one really goal for any law firm. It should be phone calls, not form submissions. Google Business Profile, we already talked about this. So this is going to measure organic calls, reviews. We also want to get signed cases from Google Business Profile, obviously, as well. We'll need to connect that to CRM to do that. LSAs, and again, this is just built on the tracking plan that I just did. When we're doing Google AdWords, Bing ads, YouTube ads, all these different ad tracking platforms, these would also be included in here. This is just for the tracking plan that I just laid out for you. So Google LSAs, calls, cost per lead, cost per case. Meta ads, same thing, leads, cost per lead, cost per case. And then a lot of our clients who don't have a CRM, we set them up on Lead Docket. A CRM, if you don't know, is a sales management platform. This allows you to take in, essentially, there's two parts. There's marketing data, front-end data. That's everything laid out here. What's happening before somebody submits their information to have a conversation with you. A CRM is going to track everything after they submit to then go through consultations, become a client, the case value, all these different things. So you have to have a CRM set up if you want to do marketing and advertising. Clio is a good platform, Lead Docket. There's a ton of platforms out there. We don't really care. Lead Docket is very simple, so our clients that don't have a CRM will set it up. Now, it's not about just setting it up, it's about managing it. That means your intake team needs to be in there they live in it, not even on a daily basis, on a minute-to-minute basis, where they are on the flow, if they have a signed agreement in front of them, if they need to go into follow-ups, questions that they have. That is your intake team's Bible. That's where they live. So within that, we're looking at signed cases and the case value. So all of these things are going to pipe into your CRM so we can see that. And then ultimately at the end of this, we're taking all this data and we're pushing it into a visualization tool. So we like to use Agency Analytics. It's a reporting platform. We also use Google Looker. It's a free platform that we'll use. It just depends on the needs of our client and how granular they want to get with their tracking. So this is an example of a report. Now, again, I'm sure your agencies are probably sending you stuff like this, but this is 100 times more impactful after you've gone through that process that we just did, because you can see here, after going through this, we're tracking this little icon here denotes where it's coming from. So this is AdWords, LSAs, this is from What Converts, this is from the website, this is from the website also, and then that's total leads over there to right. So 278 total leads last month, again, but without understanding where they're coming from, without setting any sort of targets on these or KPIs, what does 278 leads really mean? It could mean great, it could mean nothing. To some of you, that would be amazing. To others, it might be awful. And then we just break down exactly, again, like I said, based on going through this tracking process with our clients, we know what they care about. We know that they care about conversion rate. We know that they call about cost per conversion. And after we go through this, and we've been doing this for 3, 4, 6, 12, 18 months, this client's been with us for 2 years, we know what this should be. And we have our own targets set internally now that we're measuring against, saying, hey, basically setting off alarm bells like, hey, this jumped up to $216. It should be $150. Let's go back into these ads and see what's going on. Is it seasonality? Are the ads exhausted? Do we need to refresh creative? Do we need a new landing page? Do we need a new targeting strategy? But ultimately, we're also then looking at what's happening to these leads after they go through this process. Are they converting? What type of conversations are they having? What is the sales team saying about this, right? So now we're looking at SEO. We're tracking total traffic. We're tracking total impressions in search. We're tracking, specific things about content, about link building that we're doing with this client. So This is, the outcome of what we're talking about of going through that process. Now, again, some of you might be getting reports like this from your agencies, and that's great, but like, what are they measuring against? What are you holding them accountable for? A lot of you send us these reports and you're just like, I don't really know what I'm looking at. And it's not because you don't understand what cost per lead means or website traffic means. It means you don't have a foundational tracking plan in case to measure against success or failure of a campaign. So like I said in the beginning of this video, if you want us to do this, I will set up this tracking plan for you for free. We'll jump on a call. We'll talk about your business goals. We'll talk about your campaigns. We'll talk about targets because I'm a wealth of knowledge and data from all the different law firms that we work with. I can talk to you about your practice area and what you should be able to expect in your market in terms of targets, how many phone calls, what they should be costing. I know all this because I do it on a daily basis. I live, eat, breathe, sleep law firm marketing. So if you're interested, there's a link below this. It will take you directly to my calendar. Book a call. Let's have a 15-minute conversation. Let's talk about what you're doing. Let's talk about your frustrations. Let's talk about what's working, what's not. I promise you at the end of that call, you're going to walk away with so much clarity on what you should be doing for your law firm in 2025 and beyond. Hit the link below, and I'll talk to you soon. Hey, Ryan here. Hope you liked that video. If you want more, check out these two videos right here on this screen.